Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's Top 10 Game of Thrones Characters. So this video is part of a series of videos I'm doing where I count down my favorite and least favorite characters. In my other video I did my top 5 supporting characters and my top 5 dead characters. So this countdown is for my top 10 main characters of Game of Thrones who are still alive by the end of season 4. So obviously I have to give you a spoiler warning for up to the end of season 4. So this is based just off of the TV show Game of Thrones, although sometimes I do compare some characters to their book counterparts. So these aren't meant to be an objective or absolute lists in any sense of the word. A lot of people have different opinions on different characters that they like or prefer or would rather focus on. So these are all just my opinion. It will help you to understand my various Game of Thrones reviews, just to let you know my perspective on which characters I prefer to focus on. So finally I get to my top 10 main characters who are still alive as of the end of season 4 of Game of Thrones. Number 10 is Ramsay Bolton. Although I did find his storyline in season 3 of torturing Theon rather boring, I liked where they took him in season 4, and overall this is a character I'm interested in seeing a lot more of. He's a sick, sadistic creature who takes pleasure in inflicting pain, but unlike Joffrey, he's smart about it. There's sometimes a method to his madness, as the way he treated Theon actually worked to his advantage, and he ended up with an obedient slave he could use against the Ironborn, like he did at Moat Cailin. And I think this is what his father Roose sees as well, and that's why he's not just a ruthless psychopath, but an effective ruthless psychopath. And it was interesting that you were almost happy for Ramsay when he was legitimized until you remember how much of a twisted fuck he really is. So overall, an interesting character I want to see more of. Number 9 is Bronn, an interesting sellsword character who does what he needs to in order to survive. Bronn is always a lot of fun to watch, from his corpse at the Vale where he fought for Tyrion, where after he killed his opponent by fighting dirty, Lysa Arryn remarked that he did not fight with honor, to which Bronn replied, "No, but he did," indicating his dead opponent, and that sums up Bronn nicely. Since that time he's become Tyrion's right-hand man, even his loyal friend, but first and foremost, he's still a sellsword, even as he told Tyrion, "I sell my sword, I don't loan it out to friends." I know that Tyrion, now that Tyrion's gone, he's going to be fighting with Jaime and Dorne, and I can't wait to see that. Number 8 is Petyr Baelish, otherwise known as Littlefinger. Littlefinger is another one of the great villains of Game of Thrones, probably the most effective and devious one, who's affected the political map on a nationwide scale most effectively. However, we don't see much of this occur on screen, as most of his actions occur behind the shadows, which only serves to make him a more dangerous character because you never know what he's up to. He initiated Joffrey's murder by conspiring with the Tyrells, and he can be said to be responsible for setting the whole sequence of events of the entire series in motion by convincing Lysa to kill her husband and send a letter to the Starks blaming the murder on the Lannisters. But what we actually see of him, he's obviously a clever man, one who is ruthless in his lust for power. I think the quote that describes him best is when Varys said of him, he would burn the entire kingdom down if it meant he could be king of the ashes. And that's Littlefinger for you. Number 7 is Margaery Tyrell. Margaery is an interesting character whose lust for power is also great, but she achieves her goals by always wearing a facade of a naive, innocent young girl, when in reality she's anything but. In fact, she almost never drops this facade, not with her two soon-to-be 3 husbands, not with Sansa Stark, who was pretending to befriend, and definitely not with Cersei Lannister, and not even with her own brother Loras. There's been a couple of times we've seen her be honest and drop her facade. One was with her grandmother, who's she's always been honest with, where she was honest about what a monster Joffrey was, whom she was meant to marry, to which her grandmother replied, not to be honest, not to say that, not even with her. And another time was with Littlefinger when he asked her if she wanted to be a queen, to which she replied, "No, I want to be the queen," which is the quote that sums her character up nicely. I can't wait to see the battle of wits between her and Cersei in Season 5. It will be awesome. Number 6 is Jorah Mormont. Other than Shay, Jorah is probably the character who's most different from his book counterpart, as the character in the books is a lot more of a brute, more hairy, someone worthy of being called a bear, whereas Jorah in the show carries the air of a more noble person. And although that doesn't quite jive with being a Mormont from Bear Island in the north, it does make a very interesting character to be Daenerys' right-hand man and the person to educate her of the lands she's now in. The jokes have been thrown around aplenty of Jorah being named Lord Friendzone, as he obviously is in love with Daenerys, who doesn't share his affections, but I also joked once that he should be called Lord Exposition, as in the show he's often the one to give Daenerys and thus the audience vital information on the cultures of Essos. But I found him to be a very interesting character, one I'm always rooting for and would like to see more of. Number 5 is Varys. Varys as of yet has not seemed as effective in scheming as Littlefinger, but I would argue a much more interesting one. Unlike Littlefinger, who desires power and will kill anyone to get it, Varys does not desire power, at least not for himself, and often is looking out for the well-being of the realm, as he often states. But this doesn't make him trustworthy, as he is willing to betray or deceive as it serves his overall purpose. And that's why it was so interesting to watch the rivalry between him and Littlefinger throughout the first 3 seasons, as they are so similar yet so different. And Varys often has such wonderful speeches and metaphors, and mentors the hero characters of the shows, first Ned Stark, then Tyrion. And in the coming season, his storyline is bound to be far different than it was in the books, as he doesn't really appear in the books that the next season will cover, so I'm dying to see where they will take his character. Number 4 is Cersei Lannister. Cersei is a character who I think is vile, arrogant, and disgusting, and I can't wait to see her fail big time, but I love to watch her, and I like it when she's on screen. She's just a fascinating character to watch. Cersei thinks she's a lot more clever than she really is, but part of that is through mostly dumb luck thus far. Up to Season 4, she has always won. She won against Ned Stark and managed to seize the throne for her illegitimate son, which was mainly due to Ned being defeated by his own sense of honor. And she managed to stay in power at King's Landing despite Stannis' assault due to some political maneuvering on her father's behalf, and because the brother she despised doing things to keep the kingdom intact against her wishes. And because of the actions and support of others, she managed to always come out on top. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens to her when she no longer has that support. Cersei is another person who lusts after power and is somewhat good at playing the Game of Thrones, but she's overconfident, and that's her major weakness. However, I was absolutely loving it when she managed to defeat her father in the Season 4 finale by using his willful ignorance against him. I can't wait to see how she fares against Margaery in Season 5. Number 3 is Arya Stark. Arya is one of the most tortured characters in the entire series, who's lived a really hard life. She witnessed her father being killed and was so close to being reunited with her mother and her brother when they were killed right before she got to them. And she's mostly had to fend for herself, being stuck in war-torn riverlands through most of the fighting. She's had many mentors, some friends, some foe, and some a bit of both, including her father Ned Stark, Syrio Forel, Jaqen H'ghar, Tywin Lannister, Theros of Myr, Beric Dondarrion, and Sandor Clegane the Hound. All these people have had a drastic effect on her character, and I think are shaping her into becoming a bloodthirsty killer, to which we get hints of in Season 4 when she took great pleasure in getting her revenge on Pulliver. Now I'll have to see if this bundle of unfocused rage can be shaped into something effective and disciplined in Braavos, and I can't wait to see what happens. Number 2 is Tyrion Lannister. An obvious choice to be sure, but I think it's obvious for good reason. There was a reason audiences were attracted to this character, who in the first season was only presented as a side character and became more front and center in the later seasons. He's funny, clever, book smart. One of Tyrion's greatest advantages is that he is often underestimated by others who see him as nothing more than an insignificant dwarf. But I think what makes Tyrion so attractive to audiences, or at least Tyrion as he's portrayed in the show, is that he's not only clever but honorable. He often tries to do the right thing, and for obvious reasons likes to look out for the little guy, as he's befriended people like Jon Snow. But he's not afraid to play dirty if he needs to, and he isn't honorable to a fault like Ned Stark was. Some of the best moments in the entire series for me was in Season 2, where he cleaned house in King's Landing by outwitting people like Varys and Littlefinger and kicking ass against people like Maester Pycelle and Janos Slynt. And of course, where he literally kicked ass in the Battle of Blackwater. If seeing his downfall since then hasn't been quite as rewarding, but like every character in Game of Thrones, he has to go through rough times, and it's going to be really interesting to see where they take him from here. And my number 1 favorite character in Game of Thrones is Daenerys. Yes, I'm afraid I'm one of those people. Daenerys has a love-hate relationship with the audience, as there is a large group of fans that despise her and a large group of fans that love her, and I happen to be one of the latter. This is a real tale of an underdog, someone who was basically born into exile and has known nothing but hardship her whole life, who has been raised and mistreated by her vile brother. So it was so fascinating to see her come into her own and become her own woman and cast off her brother and rise up on her own. First with the help of the powerful Khal Drogo, and after his death she learned to become her own queen by defeating the warlocks of Karth. To become a legendary figure in Slaver's Bay by acquiring huge amounts of armies and legions of sellswords and using them to free all the slaves and to destroy the slave trade. And plus, come on, she has dragons. But what makes her fascinating character to me is that she's dynamic. She has flaws, she's a bit naive, and sometimes a bit over her head. In the present storyline, we see her struggling to rule as queen, which is a lot harder than she might have thought. She has made some horrible mistakes last season, first by banishing her most loyal right-hand man Jorah, and then by locking up her biggest assets, the dragons. Some people complain she's too perfect of a character, but I completely disagree. I think she's got flaws aplenty, but her heart's in the right place, and she doesn't just want power for power's sake and wants to be actually accomplish some good with it, which I believe is going to make her a major player in the endgame. So that's it for my top 10 Game of Thrones characters. Make sure you check out my channel for more Game of Thrones videos, including my Season 5 prediction videos, and make sure you subscribe to keep up with the videos I'll be doing once the Season 5 is out, and thanks a lot for watching.